Hey everyone, so on this episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm making more progress here on the 16mm railway, and I decide, let me print up a super cool little Quonset hut that doubles as a, whoops, there goes the filament, that doubles as a little mock engine slash repair shed in Eryone, I think that's how you pronounce it, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, new iron PLA filament that keeps wanting to roll off the set here. Recently, Eryone, I believe that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. If I'm saying it wrong, please don't kill me in the comment section, released their iron PLA filament, and I'm going to be frank about it. I have mixed opinions about it. It does have iron in it, so you can stick a magnet on it, although the magnetic attraction is pretty low, and you can rust it, although the rusting effect is somewhat marginal at best. But moving on from all of that, it does actually print pretty well. I would still highly recommend using at least a plated brass nozzle with this, just because any kind of filament that has potentially abrasive filler inside will absolutely destroy a brass nozzle pretty quickly. But I was able to print this perfectly fine on a stock Artillery 3D Sidewinder X2. I am going to be swapping out the nozzle on it when I'm done with printing on it, but I figured, you know what, let me just try it on a bone stock machine, see what it does. So the low magnetic attraction and the rusting aside, I do have to say though, this stuff did print quite well. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is because the iron content is pretty darn low, a kilo size spool of this is pretty close to a full kilo size spool. If you're going to compare that to, say, Proto-Pasta's iron PLA, which according to their website has about 1.5 times the density of regular PLA, 500 grams, which is the medium-sized spool that they sell, has not a lot of filament on it. So just something to keep in mind there, as filament is sold by weight, not by volume or length. That aside, what I decided to do with the hut is once I got done printing it, I came along, I masked it off. I decided to paint the door a slightly lighter color. This was a normal step on roll-up doors, so that way people could quickly see, hey, the door's open, and not drive into it. That wouldn't be very good. Then I believe I used Rust-Oleum Stone Gray for that, and then I used Rust-Oleum Charcoal for the outside. And what I did is, in a couple of spots, I just ripped some pieces of masking tape, and before I applied the masking tape, I actually came along and sanded the areas down a little bit to try and expose a little more iron. Spray painted it, waited for the paint to dry, peeled that off. Then came the weathering process. Now, I have found that LA's totally awesome cleaning vinegar that you can get over at the Dollar Tree actually works really well for rusting items. Now, it should be noted that this stuff clearly states on the label, this is not for human consumption, but this stuff is vinegar plus some surfactants plus citric acid. So I find that it flows a bit better than regular 5% household vinegar, and I've been able to get some really good rusting effects with it on the Proto-Pasta iron that I'm most familiar with. But that being said, I applied some to this and waited a good 12 hours and nothing really happened. So I then came along and dumped just a crap ton of salt on the top and let it soak, and it finally started to rust a little bit. The only problem is having all that salt on there, I'm still finding salt crystallizing on the outside of the model, which at this point I think I'm actually just going to keep it there because it looks kind of cool, like, you know, water and mineral deposits as part of the weathering on this. But I'm only mentioning this just in case somebody buys this and thinks that they can immediately get some incredible rusting effects with it. You can rust it, but as of the time of filming, the iron content is low enough that it's doable, but it's a bit of a lengthy process. So all that aside, make up your own conclusions when it comes to the filament. If you're looking for something to just get into messing around with iron-based, metal-based filaments, it might be worth a shot. Although if you really want to get some good effects, I would steer you more towards either Proto-Pasta or ColorFabb, which have a very, very high metal content for what they are. Yes, that does make them a bit more tricky to print, but the trade-off is you can get some really cool effects. So stay tuned. I hopefully will have some more videos coming on this shortly. The plan is to either 3D print or laser cut a warehouse building right here. I need to do something to help hide that. This thing, I need to figure out some siding for it. So if you guys have any suggestions for a warehouse building, if this should be brick or just tin siding or things like that, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, as well as your opinions on the filament itself. I'm very curious to see what other people feel about it, because obviously I come into it with the standpoint of I'm used to working with Proto-Pasta. That has some incredible properties, but obviously you can get used to things like that, and that's both a good and a bad thing. So hope you guys enjoyed and found this useful. See you here next time on Make It with Calvin.